I thought my 25th birthday dinner would be one of the happiest nights of my life. Instead, it became the night I lost my family. Halfway through dessert, my father cleared his throat and placed his fork on the table. The conversation stopped immediately. Then he said 7 words that changed everything. "You were adopted. It's time you knew." My stomach dropped. Before I could even respond, my mother calmly explained that they no longer considered me part of the family's future plans. Everyone at the table stared at me. I didn't cry. I simply looked behind them and smiled. "That's interesting," I said. "My birth family is sitting 3 tables away." My name is Emma, and looking back now, the signs were always there. I grew up in a comfortable home. My parents provided everything I needed: food, clothes, a good education. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. But I never felt like I truly belonged. My younger brother, Ryan, was the center of everything. His mistakes were forgiven. His achievements were celebrated. When he wanted something, my parents found a way to make it happen. For me, the rules were different. If I wanted something, I had to earn it. Whenever I questioned the difference, my parents insisted I was imagining things. "Stop being dramatic, Emma." I heard that phrase more times than I could count. Then came my 25th birthday. A week before, my parents invited me to dinner at one of the nicest restaurants in the city. They said they wanted to celebrate a milestone and discuss some important family matters. At first, the evening seemed normal. We ordered food, talked about work, laughed about old memories. Then, dessert arrived. My father set down his fork and exchanged a glance with my mother. Something about that look immediately made me nervous. "There's something we need to tell you," he said. The next few minutes felt unreal. I learned I had been adopted as an infant. Then came the part that hurt even more. My mother calmly explained that future family assets, inheritance plans, and responsibilities would remain within the real family. I sat there in stunned silence. Finally, I understood why I had always been treated differently. What they didn't know was that I already knew part of the truth. 6 months earlier, I had started uncovering it myself. 6 months before my birthday dinner, I found something that wasn't supposed to exist. I was helping my parents organize old documents in the basement when a worn file folder slipped from a storage box. Papers scattered across the floor. Most of them were ordinary records. One wasn't. At first glance, it looked like a routine document, but the dates didn't match what I knew about my birth. Curious, I took a photo before putting everything back exactly where I found it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the following weeks, I started researching quietly. I ordered public records, requested information from agencies, followed every lead I could find. The process was slow and frustrating. More than once, I convinced myself I was chasing nothing. Then one afternoon, I made a phone call that changed my life. A woman named Margaret answered. The moment I explained who I was, she became emotional. There was a long silence before she spoke. "We've wondered about you for years," she said softly. That single sentence shattered every assumption I'd made. Over the next several months, I learned the truth. My biological family had never forgotten me. They weren't wealthy strangers searching for an heir. They weren't trying to disrupt my life. They simply wanted to know I was okay. Slowly, I got to know them. We exchanged messages, shared family photos, talked through video calls that sometimes lasted hours. I met cousins, grandparents, and relatives whose faces strangely resembled my own. For the first time in my life, I felt accepted without having to earn it. That was why I kept everything private. I wanted answers before telling anyone. Then my birthday arrived, and suddenly, the secret I'd protected for months was about to change everything. The restaurant had become painfully quiet. My parents sat across from me looking completely satisfied with themselves, as if they had finally delivered some long-overdue announcement. My father folded his hands on the table. "We felt you deserved to know the truth," he said. My mother nodded. "And it's important that there are no misunderstandings about future family matters." Future family matters. That was their polite way of saying I had just been removed from every plan they had for the future. For a few seconds, I simply stared at them. Then I smiled. It wasn't the reaction they expected. My mother frowned. Why are you smiling? I took a sip of water and carefully set down my glass, because this conversation would have shocked me 6 months ago. Both of them froze. What does that mean? My father asked. I glanced over their shoulders toward the back of the restaurant. 3 tables behind you. Confused, they slowly turned around. The moment they did, I saw the color leave my mother's face. A gray-haired woman was watching us with tears in her eyes. Beside her sat a middle-aged man who looked remarkably like me. Around them were several smiling relatives who immediately lifted their hands in greeting. My biological family. My father turned back toward me. You knew? I nodded. For months. Nobody spoke. My younger brother looked like he had forgotten how to breathe. Everything my parents had planned for this evening was collapsing right in front of them. They thought they were delivering a life-changing surprise. Instead, they had walked directly into one. A few moments later, Margaret stood and slowly approached our table. The rest of my biological family followed. Suddenly, I wasn't sitting alone anymore. For the first time that night, I felt completely supported. And judging by the expressions on my parents' faces, they were finally realizing how badly they had miscalculated everything. For several minutes, nobody knew what to say. The tension that had filled the room earlier was gone, replaced by something else entirely. Reality. Margaret sat beside me and gently squeezed my hand. We've wanted to meet you for a very long time, she said. There was no anger in her voice. No resentment. Only warmth. My biological grandfather smiled and pulled a small photo from his wallet. I've carried this for years, he said. It was an old picture of me as a baby. My throat tightened. Across the table, my adoptive parents looked increasingly uncomfortable. For the first time, they weren't controlling the conversation. The more my biological family spoke, the more pieces of my story finally made sense. I learned that my adoption had happened during difficult circumstances, not because I was unwanted. I learned that people had thought about me every birthday, every holiday, every major milestone. Most importantly, I learned that my absence had never meant I wasn't loved. Tears filled my eyes, not because I was sad, because I finally understood something I had spent 25 years questioning. There had never been anything wrong with me. My biological grandmother reached across the table. We're just grateful you gave us a chance, she said softly. That simple sentence hit harder than anything else that evening. Meanwhile, my adoptive parents sat in silence. They had spent years making me feel like I needed to earn my place in the family. Yet the people who had known me for only months accepted me completely. In that moment, a weight I had carried since childhood finally disappeared. I stopped wondering why I wasn't enough, because I finally realized I always had been. That birthday dinner changed my life in ways I never expected. For years, I had spent so much energy trying to earn approval from people who seemed determined to keep me at arm's length. I thought if I worked harder, achieved more, or became someone they could be proud of, things would eventually change. They never did. But something changed inside me that night. Over the following year, I grew closer to my biological family. What started as phone calls and occasional visits quickly became real relationships. I attended family gatherings, met cousins I instantly connected with, listened to stories about grandparents, aunts, and uncles whose names I was hearing for the first time. Every visit felt like discovering another missing piece of myself. Meanwhile, my relationship with my adoptive parents became distant. Not because I hated them, not because I wanted revenge, but because trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Eventually, they reached out. Some conversations were uncomfortable. Others were surprisingly honest. For the first time, they seemed willing to listen instead of lecture. Whether our relationship would ever fully recover, I honestly didn't know. But I had stopped measuring my worth by their acceptance. That was the difference. On my 26th birthday, I celebrated surrounded by people who were genuinely happy I was there. No conditions. No comparisons. No reminders that I needed to prove myself. Just love. At one point, I looked around the room and smiled. A year earlier, I thought I was losing my family. Instead, I had found where I belonged. And for the first time in my life, I truly felt at home.